All right. Well, we're on the this is actually the 11th session, and we're going to be looking at um the seventh vision, uh a woman in an ephah, wickedness carried to Shinar. Um I see my verse reference is wrong on that slide. It should be verse uh 5 through 11. That was but we're going to be verse 5 through 11, and we're in page 47 in your syllabus. And we'll get right into this vision. And this is the seventh vision that was given on the 24th day of the 11th month. A woman in an ephah, wickedness carried to Shinar. Let's look at this. Zechariah 5, verse 5. Then the angel who was speaking with me went out and said to me, "Lift up now your eyes and see what this is going forth." And I said, "What is it?" And he said, "This is the Ephah going forth." Again he said, "This is their appearance in all the land." And behold, a lead cover was lifted up, and this is a woman sitting inside the Ephah. And he said, "This is wickedness." And he threw her down into the middle of the ephah and cast the lead weight on its opening. Then I lifted up my eyes and looked, and there two women were coming out with wind in their wings, and they had wings like the wings of a stork. And they lifted up the ephah between the earth and the heavens. I said to the angel who was speaking with me, "Where are they taking the ephah?" And he said to me, "To build a temple for her in the land of Shinar. And when it is prepared, she will be set there on her own pedestal." So that is the seventh vision. Well, the first thing is the main uh, item that's talked about in this vision is an ephah. An ephah, um, with a woman in the ephah, and then it's lifted up and it's carried away. But the main thing is an ephah. So let's consider that first of all. An ephah. What is an ephah? Well, just to give you few different versions of how they translate this, the NASB, the King James Version, and the REV all say this is the ephah going forth. The NIV, the New International Version, says it is a basket. The New Catholic Bible says this is a bushel basket. The English Standard Version says this is the basket that is going out. The New English Translation, the NET, says it is a basket for measuring grain. The English Hebrew Tanakh says this tub is approaching. And the Complete Jewish Bible says this is the ephah measure, a 1 bushel dry measure. So, what are we talking about? Well, first of all, the Hebrew word translated ephah is the Hebrew word ephah. That's the word. The word is ephah. And it's mainly used as of a unit of dry measure. I heard somewhere that it might be Egyptian origin. I don't know about that. There were 10 omers in an ephah. In the law, often a grain offering was 1/10 of an ephah or an omer. In Ruth 2:17, Ruth gleaned an ephah of barley from Boaz's field. And in 1 Samuel 17:17, this is just before the whole thing with Goliath, David brought his brothers an ephah of roasted grain to his brothers in battle. Different Bibles show different sizes. Some say a bushel, some say 3/5 of a bushel. One says 22 liters. I see some say it's about a bushel. I saw another one said it's 5 gallons or just under 20 liters. Um, I don't know exactly what the size of an ephah was, but there were 10 omers in an ephah. Also, just for your reference, it's also a name used 3 times in the Bible. Ephah was the second son of Midian. It was the name of Caleb's concubine, and it was the name of the fourth son of Jehadai, if you care about that. But this unit of measure, there is a picture of an ephah, um, or an ephah basket. It's an ephah. And what does the ephah represent in this vision? What does it say that it represents? Again, it's a metaphor for something else. Zechariah said, "This is their appearance." This is what the angel told Zechariah. "This is their appearance in all the land." Appearance. The LXX, the Greek Septuagint, and the Syriac Aramaic read iniquity. The Masoretic text, the Hebrew Masoretic text, reads the eye in all the land. NET says this is their eye. The King James Version says this is their resemblance. The NIV says this is their iniquity. ESV says iniquity. And REV says iniquity. So what should it be? I found this, the REV Bible. I thought this was a pretty, I got a little kick out of this commentary because I could say this with a lot of things in the book of Zechariah. And he says, "This is their iniquity in all the land." Both the translation and the meaning of this sentence are uncertain. There are many different translations of this sentence and many different explanations of what it could mean. The uncertainty is such that there is little profit in going over all the problems and the potential meanings here. They can be found in good commentaries on Zechariah, but without any agreed upon resolution. The fact that Zechariah has many symbols does not help the situation. I thought that's kind of funny. So whether it's should be eye, iniquity, appearance, um, this I thought was important to look at because of what it says is he shows them this ephah and then he says, "This is their appearance." And so my question is, whose? This is whose appearance? Who's he talking about? It's their appearance. Who is there? Who are they? That this is their appearance. To get this, you actually have to go back to the vision we looked at last week, the curse that went over all the earth, and this comes right off that. And so I'd like to read this. Remember, this seventh vision follows the sixth vision, the curse over all the earth. So let's read the last part of that vision into the seventh vision, and you can see who they are that it's talking about. This is from last time in the sixth vision. "Then he said to me, This is the curse that is going forth over the face of the whole land. Surely everyone who steals will be purged away according to the writing on one side, and everyone who swears will be purged away according to the writing on the other side. I will make it go forth, declares Yahweh of hosts, and it will enter the house of the thief and the house of the one who swears falsely by my name, and it will spend the night within that house and consume it with its timber and stones. Then the angel who was speaking with me went out and said to me, Lift up now your eyes and see what is going forth. I said, What is it? And he said, This is the ephah going forth. Again, he said, This is their appearance in all the land. So if you follow the pronouns, it's talking about those in the previous version about who the curse was going towards. Those who steal, those who swear falsely, or I think in more general, those who are disobedient to the commands of Yahweh. This is their appearance in all the land. This ephah is their appearance. or this is their iniquity. This is their eye. This represents these who are going to be cursed. Now, the ephah being a unit of measure, and that's why I don't think basket's a good term. I think calling it what it is, actually calling it what the Hebrew is, an ephah is important because it's not just any basket, it's an ephah. An ephah is a unit of measure. And in this context, I think it could represent a swindler, someone who is corrupt, someone who gains by thievery or lying. Um, this would be in the category of covetousness. And I think this makes sense. And we'll look at this in more detail. Actually, last night at Vince's fellowship, I actually taught Proverbs 11 to the fellowship. And this came up. And so I wanted to bring this up tonight because, oh, wow, I'm going to cover this in the Zechariah class. Hebrews 11:1 says, a false balance is an abomination to Yahweh, but a just delight, a just weight is his delight. A false balance is an abomination. It's an abomination. If you go back to Leviticus 19:35 through 36, he says, you shall do no wrong in judgment, in measurement of weight or capacity. You shall have just balances, just weights, a just ephah, a just hin. I am Yahweh your God who brought you out from the land of Egypt. So there an ephah is used in this weights and measures, and this is in the category here in Leviticus of unjust. That you don't want to have an unjust ephah. You want to have a just ephah. Here's a cute couple other verses on this. Hosea 12:7 says, a merchant whose hands are fraudulent balances loves to exploit. You get the idea. They would go to the market and they would weigh their food in one of these in these types of measurements, and that would determine how much you would get. Look what it says in Amos chapter 8, verse 4 and 5. Hear this, you who trample the needy, to put an end to the humble of the land, saying, when will the new moon be over, so that we may sell grain, and the Sabbath, so that we may open the wheat market? And then look at this, to make the ephah smaller and the shekel bigger, and to cheat with dishonest scales. So their basket wasn't quite a full ephah, right? And they got more money than they should have gotten for the quantity in the measurement. So it's used in this negative sense of unjust balances, which really deals with greed and covetousness and man's desire. Micah 6:10 through 11 says, is there still a person in the wicked house, along with the treasures of wickedness, and a short measure that is cursed? Can I justify dishonest balances and a bag of fraudulent weights? That's an abomination to God. So I think that the first thing I think of as I look at this as an ephah is the sin of covetousness. This sin of greed and covetousness. Um, and I last time I went through the I don't know if any of you have done the book, the His Story class booklet that Vince Finnegan wrote. I've found this last time I went through it, this just really spoke to me on the sin of covetousness. And I wanted to point this out because I think that's really what we're talking about here with the ephah. From the His Story class, this is from page 25, talking about the original sin. He is the tempter, enticing all he can to sin. He cannot make us sin, but can present sin as a beautiful allurement, as he did with Eve, so that we willfully participate. As a fisherman uses bait to attract his gain, So the devil baits man with seemingly appealing sin, lust, covetousness, fornication, drunkenness, etc. Initially look exciting and fun, but eventually they lead to darkness and destruction. And then from page 31, Eve, in like manner, did not repent, rather shifted the blame to the serpent. Their change in thinking, attitude, and behavior was indeed radical. Peace, joy, and contentment, their normal state of mind, were forfeited and replaced with the crippling character defect of covetousness. Covetousness is the last of the Ten Commandments, but certainly not the least. Rather, I love this line, rather, covetousness, he says, is the quintessential of all sin. Covetousness is having a desire to possess something belonging to someone else. The cherub, God's created Holy One, was blessed and beautiful and commissioned with prestigious responsibility to watch over God's early creation, including Adam and Eve. However, he was lifted up with pride and desired to overthrow God's sovereignty and glory. He wanted to be God and have a relationship with humans that God designed. He desired that which belonged to another. Hence, the first sin was covetousness. It is the quintessential of sins. And I think in this context of this Ephah, that is what we're talking about. And there's more. It's not just that it's an Ephah, but he says there's a lead cover on it. There's this lead cover on the Ephah. There's a lead cover on it. And then he lifts up the cover and he says, this is a woman sitting inside the Ephah. So he lifts up the cover from the Ephah, and there's a woman sitting in the Ephah. And then he says, this is wickedness. What's inside this Ephah? Wickedness. Wow. This is kind of deep. This is quite something. He then throws her down in the middle of the Ephah, verse 8, and he casts the lead weight back on its opening. So he puts the woman, he reveals what's inside. Says, this is what's hiding inside this Ephah. And he casts the lead weight on its opening. And then it says in verse 9, then I lifted up my eyes and looked. And there were two women who were coming out with wind in their wings, and they had wings like the wings of a stork. And they lifted up the ephah between the earth and the heavens. I said to the angel who was speaking with me, where are they taking the ephah? And he said to me, to build a temple for her in the land of Shinar. And when it is prepared, she will be set there on her own pedestal. Wow. So he shows them what's hidden in this ephah is wickedness, this woman, which represents wickedness in this ephah, this measuring device that was used in when they did good and also unjust weights. And he said, where are they taking? So these women with wings in they pick up this ephah and they carry it off to the land of Shinar. So what does that mean? The land of Shinar. Shinar, you have to go all the way back to the book of Genesis. And in Shinar is the word Shinar, I think, means between the two rivers, between the Euphrates and the Tigris. And the land of Shinar, when Nimrod he went to Shinar and began building the Tower of Babel. Shinar became Babylon. It's Babylon. The first great empire, the first great kingdom in the world that was against God was Babylon. Um, Shinar is another term for Babylon. He's going to carry away the woman to Babylon. So Ephah containing wickedness is carried away by two women with wings like the wings of a stork and carried to Shinar, which is another term for Babylon. And in Babylon, there's going to be a temple that is going to be built for her, and she will sit on her pedestal in Babylon. Some of you took the Daniel class that I did, and Daniel took place in the city of Babylon. That's where Daniel was when Nebuchadnezzar's kingdom was the kingdom of Babylon of Nebuchadnezzar. So I wanted to go over some of the information because in the second session of segment 2 of the Daniel class, we spent an entire segment looking at Babylon and the goddess Ishtar in the city of Babylon, which I believe is this woman. I think they're all metaphoric uses of this same evil that you can see throughout the Bible, of what Babylon represents. So I'm going to go through a little of this because I think this is appropriate. This is all from the Daniel class. The city of Babylon, mentioned in the scripture, spans the entire Bible. From Genesis, it's the first kingdom that was against God's glory, and that Babel is where God said, let us go down, and he separates the languages so the people can't communicate with other, and they leave off the building because it wasn't to God's glory, and he had to stop it. And that was the Tower of Babel. Um, and that was ancient Babylon that was built by Nimrod in the land of Shinar. That's in Genesis chapters 10 and 11. Um, the first dynasty, the Amorite dynasty, was from 1900 BC to 1200 BC. It's believed that at that time was the famous Babylonian king Hammurabi. Now, if you remember Genesis chapter 14, during the time of the man Abraham, it was the king of Shinar, which is Babylon, that came and stole Lot and the people, and they brought him over. And you have in the Bible the first war. The first war in the Bible, battle between countries that's recorded, was started by the king of Shinar, Babylon. Some actually believe that king listed in that record is Hammurabi. I don't know if that's true or not. But anyway, that was this first Babylon Empire way back then. At the time of Daniel, you have Nebuchadnezzar's Babylon. This was the Babylon that Daniel was brought into captivity. This is the Babylon that all these people who are now building the temple here in Jerusalem just came out of captivity. By this time of the rebuilding of the temple in Zechariah, the city of Babylon's still there, but the Persians have overtaken it. It's now the Persian Empire, and they overtook the city of Babylon. I don't know. The Babylon never really rose up to be a powerful city after that. I believe Alexander the Great died in Babylon. He went there, and that's where he ended up dying, was in Babylon as he was conquering in the Greek Empire. By the time you get to the New Testament, I don't think Babylon was anything too exciting. I know, according to Peter, he went to Babylon, but pretty much Babylon kind of went into disarray. And it wasn't until 1938 that they started doing archaeological digs in that desert region that had been covered with desert of what became of Babylon. But the book of Revelation talks about a future Babylon. There is another Babylon that is going to rise up. And there are many people who try and figure out what is this Babylon? What is this Babylon of the future? And I believe that is what we're talking about here in this vision, that this Ephah is carried away to a future time of Shinar, of Babylon. It is going to be where this woman of wickedness will sit on her temple, on her throne in the future Babylon. So this is another thing we discussed was, what is Babylon? Here on the left in the slides here, um, this is a 1930s picture from Wikipedia on the excavation of the ruins of ancient Babylon. That's a picture from the 1930s. That's what Babylon looked like in Iraq. Today it's in the country of Iraq. That what you're looking at is the Ishtar Gate, which was dedicated to the goddess Ishtar. Part of that gate was taken apart and taken to the museum is it in Germany? Where it was taken away to a museum. There were many people who study eschatology that were actually very certain. They spoke very certainly about this. If you remember in the 1990s, there was a man, Saddam Hussein, and he began rebuilding Babylon. He rebuilt the Ishtar Gate. He had his big castle or home in Babylon, and he was trying to revitalize Babylon. With Israel now a nation again, and with this going on in Iraq under Saddam Hussein, there were many who study eschatology who believed that this was the start of the new Babylon being built by Saddam Hussein in the 1990s. And it really had a lot of it. Wow, it looked like this was going to be this Babylon of the future. Then in 2001, there was the Gulf War. And if you remember, the United States kind of took down Iraq, and the people of Iraq took Saddam Hussein and they killed him. And I saw some pictures posted several years back, which showed these palaces that Saddam Hussein had built in Babylon that are now just sitting empty, and there's graffiti all over them. And this whole idea that this was going to rise up and be something great, it never materialized. There was also a thought that someone thought that Iraq would be a destination place for historians and people who wanted to study history to come to Iraq and study the ancient. But it never materialized. Once the U.S. pulled out of Babylon and their military out of Iraq, and their military pulled out, it's not exactly the destination station that people want to go. It's not where you're going to have a destination vacation. Iraq, people aren't going there. So I don't know. I mean, maybe that is going to rise up and be this Babylon again. But I wonder if it's something else. In 1966, there was a book by Ralph Woodrow, and the ministry I was with was really into this book. And that book was called Babylon Mystery Religion. And that book kind of hypothesized that the Babylon of Revelation was the Roman Catholic Church, or an extension, or Rome, and by extension, the Roman Catholic Church, that this was the Babylon mystery religion that is what is talked about in the book of Revelation, that this Rome was this capital city, and kind of had the idea that the Pope was going to be the Antichrist and the beast that rises in the end. That was kind of indicated in this book by Ralph Woodrow, Babylon Mystery Religion. Another thing I've heard people mention is Babylon America? Now, I don't know anything about this book by Alan Bonk. Um, I just saw the title of it, and it's called America, the Daughter of Babylon. I don't know if it's good. I don't know anything about it. I don't know if it's fiction. I don't know if they're trying to say, but just the name of it caught my attention because that's a thought I've read and heard people say that America is Babylon with its greed and covetousness and its influence on the world. And some have thought New York City is Babylon. Some have thought Hollywood is Babylon. I don't know. So, anyways, there's all these different ideas of what this future Babylon is. So, what I did in the Daniel class was rather than trying to figure that out because I don't know if I'm smart enough or wise enough. I have my ideas and my thoughts, but I said, why is Babylon judged in the book of Revelation? Why is it judged? That's pretty clear, and I'll show you this. Why is this future Babylon going to be judged? And in Revelation 14:8, these are from the English Standard Version. Another angel, a second, followed, saying, "Fallen, fallen is Babylon the Great, she who made all nations drink of the wine of the passion of her sexual immorality." The word sexual immorality comes from the Greek word porneo, which we get pornography. Sexual immorality is illicit sex, sex out of marriage, lesbianism, transvestite, transgender. All that falls under this umbrella of porneo, sexual immorality. And according to Revelation, Babylon in the future is going to fall because it makes the nations drink this wine of her passion. Um, I think this fits very well with this uh, woman wickedness in the basket that's going to get carried to Shinar here in Zechariah. The Ephah is carried away to Shinar, Babylon, where a temple is built for her, and this is wickedness. As a metaphor, the woman here represents wickedness. This woman can be seen throughout scriptures, and I'm going to show you a few verses. The evil, adulterous woman, seducing kings, seducing God's people, seducing nations by feeding on humanity's lust and covetous desires, the lust of the eyes, including greed, wealth, and sexual immorality. This is what this woman of wickedness is, and you can see this through the scriptures. One example is in Numbers 25. And Israel remained at Shittim. The people began to commit infidelity with the daughters of Moab, for they invited the people to sacrifice of their gods. The people ate, bowed down to their gods. They became followers of Baal Peor. And the Lord was angry with Israel. And he took the leaders, and they were to kill his men who had become followers of Baal Peor. In Numbers 31, they spared the women of Moab. And Moses said to them, "Have you spared all the women? Behold, they are the cause of the sons of Israel through the counsel of Balaam to be unfaithful to Yahweh in the matter of Peor, so that the plague took place among the congregation of Yahweh." If you remember the record, Balak, who was a Moabite, wanted Balaam to curse Israel, and 3 times he wouldn't do it. But Balaam wasn't done. What you see from these other records in the scriptures that Balaam taught Balak, said, if you want to get rid of Israel, cause them to be unfaithful to Yahweh, and God will curse them. Right? They're going to get the curse by that. So the women of Moab, this was through the counsel of Balaam, the women of Moab infiltrated Israel and caused them to worship other gods. How significant was this? 1 Corinthians 10:8 talks about this incident, and it says about us, "Nor are we to commit sexual immorality as some of them did, and 23,000 fell in one day. From this council of Balaam, where caught the sexual immorality that was committed, 23,000 fell in one day. In Revelation, Balaam comes up again, Revelation 2, verse 14, and he said, but I have a few things against you. I can't remember which church. This is one of the churches. Because you have some there who hold the teaching of Balaam, who kept teaching Balak to put a stumbling block before the sons of Israel to eat sacrifice to idols and to commit sexual immorality. Last week, during the curse, I showed you some of the things that had happened. This was from the book of Nehemiah. And it says, in those days, I saw that the Jews had married women from Ashdod, Ammon, and Moab. These Moabite women were back again at the time of where we're talking about. As for the children, half spoke in the language of Ashdod, and none of them were able to speak the language of Judah. So I contended with them and cursed them and struck some of them and pulled out their hair, made them swear to God, you shall not give your daughters to their sons, nor take their daughters for your sons. Did not Solomon, king of Israel, sin regarding this thing? Yet among the many nations there was no king like him, and he was loved by his God, and God made him king over Israel. Nevertheless, the foreign women caused even him, even Solomon, the wisest man in the world, to sin. Do we hear that you have committed this great evil by acting unfaithfully against our God, by marrying foreign women? That's this woman. That's this wickedness. Proverbs speaks of the evil woman, the strange woman. Proverbs 2, verse 12, to rescue you from the evil way, from a person who speaks perverse things, from those who leave the path of uprightness to walk in the ways of darkness, who delight in doing evil and rejoice in perversity of evil, whose paths are crookedness, who are devious in their ways, to rescue you from the strange woman, from the foreign woman who flatters with her words, who leaves the companion of her youth and forgets the covenant of her God. For her house sinks down to death, and tracks lead to the dead. None go to her, nor do they reach the paths of life. But you will walk in the way of good people and keep the path of righteousness, for the upright will live in the land, and the blameless will remain in it. But the wicked will be eliminated from the land, and the treacherous will be torn away from it. This woman here in Proverbs brings about this that is wicked. In Proverbs 6:24, it says, to keep you from the evil woman, from the smooth tongue of the foreign woman. Do not desire her beauty in your heart, nor let her capture you with her eyelids. For the price of a prostitute reduces one to a loaf of bread, and an adulteress for a precious life, hunts for a precious life. Proverbs 7, do not let your heart turn aside to her. Do not astray to her paths. For many are victims that she has brought to ruin, and numerous are all those slaughtered by her. Her house is the way of Sheol, descending to the chambers of death. I think this wicked woman is this wickedness throughout the scriptures. In the book of Revelation, to the church of Thyatira, it talks about the woman Jezebel. I don't know if this is literally a woman named Jezebel at the time of Thyatira, or again, if this is a metaphor representing this influence that was taking place in the church at Thyatira. And this is in Revelation 2, 20 through 24. I have this against you, that you tolerate that woman Jezebel, who calls herself a prophetess and is teaching and seducing my servants to practice sexual immorality, to eat food sacrificed unto idols. I gave her time to repent, but she refuses to repent of her sexual immorality. Behold, I'll throw her on a sick bed, and for those who commit adultery with her, I'll throw into great tribulation unless they repent. I will strike her children dead. All the churches will know that I am he who searches the mind and hearts, and will give to each of you according to your works. But to the rest of you in Thyatira, who do not hold this teaching, and look what it says here, who have not learned what some call the deep things of Satan, to you I say, do not lay on any other burden. This This spiritual influence of wickedness is the deep things of Satan. Mark 7:21, Jesus talked about these things. Evil thoughts, sexual immorality, murder, adultery, coveting, wickedness, sensuality. 1 Corinthians 6:9, he talks about sexual immorality, idolaters, adulterers, men who practice homosexuality, thieves, greedy. You see, it's all under this umbrella, the wider umbrella of covetousness, of this greed, lust. Ephesians 5:5 and 6 says, "For you may be sure that everyone who is sexually immoral or impure, or who is covetous, that is an idolater, has no inheritance in the kingdom of Christ and God." Then it says, "Let no man deceive you with empty words, for because of these things, sexual immorality, impurity, covetousness, the wrath of God comes." This is what's going to bring about the wrath of God on the sons of disobedience. Sexual immorality, covetousness, impurity. In ancient Babylon, there was the worship of the goddess Inanna and Ishtar. Her temples, and this is from the worldhistory.org, shrines were numerous, and sacred prostitutes of both genders may have been employed to ensure the fertility of the earth. Her clergy were both male, female, and a third, which would be defined as transgender in modern day. The male transgenders, known as Kugara, castrated themselves. Females who identified as males were known as Galator. Both were thought to have been transformed by Inanna Ishtar herself. Sacred prostitution was a central part of the ritual in the temple. The priestess performed a sacred marriage to ensure the fertility of the country. There were lesser priestesses who were musicians, singers, dancers. Certainly some of these were men who copulated with both men and women. The goddess Ishtar, this is this wickedness, this woman had turned these men into women as a demonstration of her awesome powers. And doesn't that sound modern, huh? So that's Babylon, that's wickedness, that's this woman. And now I'd just like to read with you. I'm just going to read through this and just read. This is Babylon in the future. God commits 2 whole chapters of this future Babylon. And look at why it is judged. Look at what it is that causes this devastation at the end of this age. Revelation 17:1. And then one of the 7 angels who had the 7 bowls came and said to me, "Come, I will show you the judgment of the great prostitute who is seated on many waters, with whom the kings of the earth have committed sexual immorality. And with the wine of those sexual immorality, the dwellers on the earth have become drunk." And he carried me away into the spirit into a wilderness, and I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast that was full of blasphemous names and had 7 heads and 10 horns. The woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet and adorned with gold and jewels and pearls, holding in her hand a golden cup full of the abominations and the impurities of her sexual immorality. And on her forehead was written a name of mystery: Babylon the Great, mother of prostitutes and of earth's abominations. And I saw a woman drunk with the blood of the saints, the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. When I saw her, I marveled greatly. But the angel said to me, "Why do you marvel? I will tell you the mystery of the woman and of the beast with the 7 heads and the 10 horns that carries her. The beast that you saw was and not and is about to rise from the bottomless pit and go to destruction. And the dwellers on the earth, whose names have not been written in the book of the life from the foundation of the world, will marvel to see the beast, because it was and is not and is to come. This calls for a mind with wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman is seated. There are also 7 kings, 5 of whom have fallen. One is, the other has not yet come. And when he does come, he must remain only a little while. As for the beast that was and is not, it is an 8th, but it belongs to the 7, and it goes to destruction. And the 10 horns that you saw are 10 kings who have not yet received royal power, but they are to receive authority as kings for 1 hour together with the beast. These are of one mind, and they hand over the power and authority to the beast. Verse 15, the angel said to me, "The waters that you saw where the prostitute is seated are peoples and multitudes and nations and languages. And the 10 horns that you saw, they and the beast will hate the prostitute. They will make her desolate and naked and devour her flesh and burn her up with fire. For God has put it in their hearts to carry out his purpose by being of one mind, handing over their royal power to the beast until the word of God are fulfilled. And the woman that you saw is the great city that has dominion over the kings of the earth. Chapter 18. And I after saw this, another angel coming down from heaven, having great authority, and their earth was with bright with his glory. And he called out with a mighty voice, Fallen, fallen is Babylon the Great. She has become a dwelling place for demons, a haunt for every unclean spirit, a haunt for every unclean bird, a haunt for every unclean and detestable beast. For all nations have drunk the wine of the passion of her sexual immorality, and the kings of the earth have committed immorality with her. And the merchants of the earth, the merchants have grown rich from the power of her luxurious living. Then I heard another voice from heaven saying, Come out of her, people, lest you take part in her sins, lest you share in her plagues, for her sins are heaped as high as heaven, and God has remembered her iniquity. Look at verse 9. And the kings of the earth who committed sexual immorality and lived in luxury with her. So you got sexual immorality and living in luxury. The merchants of the earth got rich and wealthy. They will weep and wail over her when they see the smoke of her burning. Verse 10, Alas, alas, the great city, you mighty city Babylon, for in a single hour your judgment has come. And the merchants of the earth weep and mourn for her, since no one buys anymore. Cargoes of gold, silver, jewels, pearls, fine linen, scarlet cloth, all scents of wood, all kinds of articles of ivory, all kinds of articles, cinnamon, spice, myrrh, frankincense, and all these things. And verse 19, they threw the dust on their heads, they wept and mourned, crying, Alas, alas, for the great city, where all who have ships in the great sea grew rich by her wealth, for in a single hour she has laid waste. Rejoice over her, O heaven, and you saints and apostles and prophets, for God has given judgment for you against her. And I took a mighty stone, the mighty angel took a stone like a great millstone and threw it into the sea. So will Babylon, Shinar, the great city, be thrown down with violence and will be found no more. And the sound of harpists and musicians, of flute players, trumpeters will be heard no more. Craftsmen of any kind will be found no more. And the light of a lamp will shine in you no more. And the voice of the bridegroom, the bride, will be heard in you no more. For your merchants were the great ones of the earth, and all nations were deceived by your sorcery. And in her was found the blood of the prophets and the saints, and all who have been slain on the earth. So that, I believe, is the woman of wickedness in the basket that is being shown to Zechariah. He puts a lid on it and it's carried away. And there's going to be a Babylon in the future, and it's going to be covetousness and sexual immorality are going to be at the heart of the deception that draws the nations in and will be intoxicated with this wickedness of the woman. So there's stuff to consider. What can we learn about the time of Haggai and Zechariah? In the seventh vision, Zechariah sees an ephah going forth. He is told that this is their appearance or iniquity in all the land. A lead cover is over the ephah, and the lid is lifted up so Zechariah can see what is inside. Inside he sees a woman, and he is told that this is wickedness. The lead weights carried, placed back on the ephah, and the two women with wings as storks lift the ephah with the women up from the earth. Zechariah asks, Where are they taking the ephah? And is told, They are taking it away to build a temple for her in Shinar, which is Babylon. And when it is prepared, she will be set there on her pedestal. This would seem to be a continuation of the warning of the curse from the sixth vision and a glimpse into the future wickedness that will be coming in a future Babylon. What can we learn about future prophecy? This vision seems to be mainly regarding a future prophecy of wickedness that's coming to a future Babylon yet to come. And then in the book of Revelation, Babylon has not risen up since the time of Nebuchadnezzar, has not been to that greatness of it. So this is still something coming in the future. And the book of Revelation, chapter 17 and 18, provide great detail about this woman, this prostitute that will be over 10 kings and make all nations drink of the wine of her sexual immorality and her covetousness. What can we learn for us practically today? As we approach the coming day, this wickedness of sexual immorality and covetousness will be a reason a future kingdom Babylon is going to be judged. And so do not partake. So the one thing that I asked myself, and I'm just going to leave you with a question. Up until this, the visions really relate to what's going on. Kind of they're built, you think about what's going on here. All right. Zechariah in the third month after they start, it's the 11th month. That night he receives 8 visions. The context is that they are building a temple in Jerusalem here at the time of Zechariah under the leadership of Zerubbabel and Joshua the high priest. In the first visions, God encourages them not to be worried about these nations around them, these 4 horns that are coming against them, that he is going to be a wall of fire for them. They don't need to worry about the walls and the size of Jerusalem and the temple. And then Joshua the high priest is reclothed. Zerubbabel is given the admonition that he is going to finish it. He is going to put on the capstone of this temple, and he is going to finish this temple. And then there's a warning about the curse, the warning about the curse that's coming. And then he gives this prophecy about Babylon and about a temple that's going to be built in Babylon. So why? I leave that with a question to you. And I think maybe if we could answer that question, why does he reveal this? Maybe we could understand a little bit more what this Babylon will be, because I definitely am curious. I have my ideas, but I'm going to leave it at that. So that's all for this week. Next week, we'll finish up with the 8th vision. And then after that, I'm just going to do, we'll go 16 total weeks. So I'll go 4 more weeks after that, and we'll cover the rest of the chapters in Zechariah. I'm not going to go into as much detail as I did on these visions, but next week we'll finish up with chapter 6 and the 8th vision. So that's where we will be next week.